Hi everybody and welcome to EdTechTalk. In this episode we're just going to have a brief talk about the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room being access. And different schools have different access. You may be in a school that has a suite of iPads, you may have some laptops knocking around, may well be the computer room. Or you may not have access at all, or very rarely in your subject, and your only IT concerns would be from a homework point of view. So wherever you are on that journey, we kind of need to be able to talk to you about that. So we will try and get that in. But when it comes to access, Adam, you know, from your own perspective, or from mine, people know me, they know that we've got a one-to-one. And hopefully, or I think that's where technology or where education's got to go. How do we get from whatever anyone's school has? What's the first step? Is it homework? Is it to complement the classroom? What are your thoughts?
I went about it with my own students in just access to material.
Yep.
And making opportunities for home learning accessible, but then also giving them the material to support it. So I've taught at a time where here's your class notebook, here's where you evidence your learning that you do in class. And then there's
the physical book.
Yeah.
We have to point that out sometimes.
And then there's your homework book.
Yeah.
And okay, lesson 1 of the year. There's 30 because you've got a class of 30. Make sure you rip the answers out the back. And I'm like, why? You know, why would you take away that opportunity for the students to reflect on their learning? And okay, so I send them home with that homework book. Am I sending them home with their class notes? No, because they might use them. Yeah, I think that's the point. Is it not? So I got about that with then moving all of my content that I was creating and my actual notes that I was taking in the classroom into OneNote.
Yep.
And starting to use the class notebook for tools for that. Because I also then got to the point where I couldn't bear the thought of writing up all of these wonderful annotations and anecdotes that we were having as part of our class discussion on a whiteboard, for then within 2 minutes of the students leaving the classroom to just rub it all off, and it was gone, and that was it. Yeah. So I wanted to create an environment where my students could access that material that we were creating and not make it so dependent on what they'd copied off the board.
So when you say that, what they've copied off the board, I came to that realization with some notes in an IT. So it wasn't maths, it was a note-taking subject. And I kind of got around to the fact that I gave them the notes themselves, like all of them, already done, but I made them annotate it afterwards. So rather than copy, and there's probably a lot to be said about that. You know, a lot of people say the act of copying is part of the learning process. But for me, it was the act of copying was the act of copying. It wasn't the act of learning.
No, I found that my when they were active copying, wasn't teaching them to be thinkers, wasn't teaching them to be independent. And even then, to be honest, I realised how much I obsessed over my own notes. And this is going back to, I had a pile of textbooks and an iPad and an Apple TV and then my own book. And it got to the point where I honestly started asking myself, why don't you just do it and then just photocopy it and give it to the students? Because as I say, I wanted them to be mathematical thinkers, whereas I was just providing an environment of copying off the board. Yeah. And that in itself was dreadful. It was poor teaching practice. I wanted to move away from it as soon as I possibly could. And then it then became about, well, actually, some of the comments that were coming out of the students, well, how can I capture that? And where can I put it all so as then they can have access to it? Their retrieval will then kick in because they'll start then looking at certain things that are all captured within this learning book. And I saw it as well. I used to be part of the moderation team that would go into primary schools. Yep. And what the primary practitioners were doing was absolutely fantastic, in the sense that they'd be walking around.
Fantastic,
teaching assistants live in the classroom with a digital camera, ready to quickly go and capture that. The arduous part of that then for the poor teaching assistants was, okay, well, that's on my SD card. Now I'll go and plug it in and I'll download this all off and I'll print these photos off and stick it into the book. To satisfy a culture of, look, I did capture them learning. Yeah. It was happening. Look, can the teacher pose in the background quickly while she's giving some feedback?
No,
don't look at the
Ofsted, right? That's we must capture it because someone might come back and say, did they learn it? And it's like proving it to somebody else.
Wait, that's your evidence of good teaching and learning. So
for you, it was complementary. It wasn't because I think a lot of people looking at this will think the access thing, I can't start because I can't access in the classroom. And, and also I can't guarantee that every kid can do it at home as well. So this is complementary for you, really.
Yeah, and that's where then I go with the mantra of, if the students can't access it on their mobile phone, there's no point creating it.
Yeah, so, okay, that neatly goes on to what is the access, right? Because during the pandemic, that kicked in straight away. How are the kids going to access the classroom? I mean, are we now at a time where we can say every kid, okay, let's say over 13, let's just use that as a marker, because that seems to be the technological line in the sand where kids suddenly become trustworthy on the internet.
What age is it that young people can stay at home? Is that 13 or 14 without parent care? But
dare say someone will comment if I get it wrong. But
whatever that age is, that's then definitely the age that they should then have a device that they can.
Well, I think for most parents, and I do think for most, because I do talk to a lot of parents, this is, I'm over that age where, we get a lot of parents now where their kids are hitting secondary school that I grew up with, and they're asking me the advice, when should they get a phone? So it's not my choice, but, my daughter has one, and I have all the login details for her because, she knows I have that. It's not like I'm spying on her, because I said that was the deal done. You want it earlier, I'm going to have to just check stuff on you. But are we at a point where we can say the vast majority, if not all kids, let's say 13 is that marker, but I pretty much think 11, have a mobile phone that can do apps?
Yeah, I've not encountered a student who hasn't, and I think that the versions of applications that come out now, to be honest, you don't need the latest handset. We've been through that. Where
you could go
coincidentally, my battery life is expiring just as my contract is coming up for renewal. We're past that now.
Apple's been caught with their hands in the cookie jar with that one.
My Apple phone that I've got is a very old model, and until it breaks and cracks or anything, I now don't feel the need to replace it, and all of the applications that run on the software for that.
So if we're going to assume, and it is a big assume because there might be a few, and I think it's for schools. I actually do think it's for schools to identify who can or can't access information at home and help sort that out. Right? There's enough old laptops that could be wiped down and given. We can come to that point of conversation another time. Yeah. So if we're going to be talking a lot about Teams, about OneNote, about all the applications that we do, has the mantra got to be test it on the phone so that then the kids can do what you're hoping they can do?
Yeah, as I say, and that's as the bare minimum. And then, to be honest, we in the school that I work at, we're really fortunate in that we've got a very strong wealth of laptop banks now, one in every single department, two in some. And we're already now having the conversations to say, well, actually, we've got 6 ICT suites with 30 PCs in each. They don't stop working at 3 p.m. Yep. If a student really needs access to it, well, it's open. There are then, as I say, there's I find that there's two very strong camps of homework's a waste of time. And we get away from that, that idea of it's homework, it's I like to think of myself as I like to create extended learning opportunities. Mm-hmm. They're not compulsory. Yeah. You can't keep saying to young people and students, you'll only get out what you put in, if you don't automatically give them the opportunity to opt out or automatically give them the opportunity to opt in. So we have that strong camp, and then we have the kind of parent that no matter how outstanding the school teaching is, of a weekend, they'll still send them off to private tuition because they just want to give them even more opportunity. And they really value education. They value learning. So
I think in the Chinese culture, they call it, there's a second tier of learning. And it said it, and for most people, they actually start as soon as school ends, and there's different cultures for different people, right? And some people will say no to homework. Some people say homework's essential. Some say let the kids play. You can't please all the people all the time.
you just have to, I think it's our obligation to provide that opportunity for them to then make the choice of the balance, because I've been that PE teacher as well that's like, have you got any homework? Yeah. Well, don't worry, because we've got the fixture first. Football's kicking off at 3:30.
I got my wrist slapped. I did nearly sport every day after school every week, and I was getting my wrist slapped a lot at school for the homeworks. But
that was it. It was like, well, let's find that balance. Yeah. So, but as I say, we still have to provide that opportunity. And for me, if you're going to provide that opportunity, make sure that the learning opportunity that you provide can at least be done on a mobile phone.
Yeah. And I think that is, I talked years ago, there was a colleague I used to work with when I was dealing with Apple stuff, and this was 10, 15 years ago, where the iPod Touch had just come around, and their entire school went iPod Touch.
Wow.
And this was back in the day when the iPod Touches were like, really small screen size.
Yeah.
And everyone said there's no way that you can work on a device that small. Their eyes are going to be, we always get that screen time issue, that kind of stuff. It said it was not a problem. The kids were used to it. They would just tap it away, doing their work, transformed the entire school. And I don't know, because I think it's easy for me to say, a private school that can dictate one-to-one, right? That's I use the word in inverted commas because I know it wasn't, because I lived it, an easy option, because we can say, come to the school, don't come to school, we need you to have a laptop. And it's difficult in the state sector to be able to say that, because who's providing it? And then when the state provides that laptop, who's looking after it? What happens when it's stolen? I understand the reticence, but every kid's got a phone.
As I say, I've not come across one yet, and then furthermore, I always take it back to, I'll walk into our staff room and go and grab a coffee in the morning, and someone will be on their phone checking cover because they can get their email on their phone. Yeah. And if you think that that's not how your students are going to function, that's a little bit ignorant in my opinion, because they're going to be exactly the same. That's the culture that they're being brought up into. Yeah,
well, no, I remember when we did the transformation piece, about 14, 15 years ago, when the iPad first came out, we launched on it, and we just gave it to staff to do the register. Because I know how, depending on how old the people are watching this,
doing the register,
the register used to take 5-10 minutes to log on to, and we gave the iPads out, and the register was there. You wouldn't believe the sigh of relief, and that was just access. That was access. So when we talk about the kids, they've got their phones, they've got access, and so we can take this. Can we?
Yeah.
I'm not saying bring the phones into school, by the way, before I get people like screaming at you just saying it. I think, I do actually think there's a time where that's inevitable, or a device in school is inevitable. Yeah. When that happens is a huge negotiation piece.
And it's got to be shaped around the culture of learning and the environment and the nature of the learning that you do.
And I don't think a phone should be being whipped out in school and being used. We had strict rules ourselves about that.
Well, again, for someone that's taught maths,
sometimes
you say to your students, we've done key stage 3 learning, we've done best buys, ratio and proportion. You're doing those calculations, and I used to love it when there was I don't want to be too slanderous, but there was a supermarket here that, let's say, now sells Waitrose products that it didn't used to.
Yeah, I know.
Right, and they were fantastic at putting things up that were £1 each or 2 for £2. Yeah. Now you set your students the challenge of saying, next time you're in a supermarket, if you see one, photograph it. Oh my goodness, you'll see plenty of photographs.
I literally took one about a week ago that said, I was in Southampton Hospital, and it was one for £1 on an offer, or 2 for £2.50.
Amazing.
It was fantastic. Amazing. So I actually had to do two separate purchases.
And again, that's the thing. So look what the adults are doing, the students will do. So the minute you're then advocating that culture, that's your home learning. That's that extended opportunity.
Yeah. And I think I'm with you on that. And I said, so for us, I think the elephant in the room is access. Is it going to change anytime soon? We all know it's not, right? So we have to be realistic about where are we going to use these skills, these tools. For me, this whole piece is about saving time. Now, whether you save time through note preparation, because you've already got it in OneNote, right, and you can stick it on the board, you can give it to the kids to amend it, or it's automated forms, or it's anything else, it's just about time saving.
Yeah, and that's then where, as I say, I go back to, that's why I used OneNote, because when I got to the stage where I was recording and photographing and displaying on the screen and going, well, why don't I just video this as well? Yeah. And it got to that point where of going, look, I'm trying to model best practice here, but how are my students then going to access that elsewhere? That's fine. The best thing for me about, and the reason that I use OneNote, is because it's got to be the most flexible canvas that I've ever used. And my real hook is, and we'll dive more into these a little bit later on.
We'll do that next,
one of them is, but I've got a PowerPoint for that. Cool. Print it to OneNote.
Yeah, stick it in. Yeah.
Print it into OneNote, and then enjoy the pleasure of being able to annotate that.
I mean, people know my journey. Went through Apple stuff first, definitely into Google, Microsoft relatively new, but that's been the one thing that stood out.
Was the OneNote.
OneNote. And it's the one, when we were going around BET, that was the one. Every time we were going to say, what's your top tips? And they were going, OneNote. I said,
Yeah,
that's been taken already, right?
Yeah, something you can do in OneNote. Did you know in OneNote you can do this?
OneNote. And it does seem to be that kind of gateway drug for teachers to come into it.
It's the hook.
That's why we mention it, though, because it's access, right? There's people out there thinking, there's no way I'm going to be accessing technology on a regular basis in my subject, so I'm not going to bother. And what's it really going to do? What's this investment of time? Because time is the commodity.
Yeah.
That we don't have.
And again, I've got a colleague. I'm not going to name her. She's fantastic, and she's a geography teacher. And her OneNote page.
Just named her then, yeah.
Her OneNote page creations are superb. It's literally like she's taken 6-7 years worth of textbooks that get released every year for the exam board, and she's just brought them to life in an environment that then the students can use. And her favourite thing now is that she goes, I've got my content for next year. Yeah. Naturally, she's going to tweak and she's going to amend as the course changes and as the students change and their needs change, but she's got that bank that she can then build on. Which,
because it came out in the news about 2 or 3 days ago that in Australia, I think it was, might have been Melbourne actually when it came out, and it said that they were going to help the teachers' workload by doing all their lesson plans for them.
Amazing.
And I was just like, okay, of all the things to do for a teacher, it's the heart of your lesson.
Yeah.
Don't take away the admin, the report writing, the stuff that really winds people up, and reduce the number of parent-teacher consultations or think differently about how you do them. No, it's that creative piece that makes a teacher a teacher. Yeah, no, let's make it drones across the board. And it really wound me up. And I said, but when you say that I will get you to name her at some point, because let's have her in. I mean, that'd be the challenge, right?
Absolutely.
And because we want to hear it from other people, otherwise it get boring, just me and you. And that point about the time saving, for me, when I was teaching maths, and I moved to more essay-based subjects with the ICT, ironically, it is way more essay-based than you'd think.
Okay.
We'll get onto that conversation another day. But with the maths, for me, it was the automatic marking on forms. And I knew that the time I spent that one time making it took about the same amount of time as to mark a full class set, sometimes even a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I used that material because it was math.
And that's it.
Every blinking year.
And
and after that first year of pain came, I just went back and I went, done.
Yeah.
That second year was glorious.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying. Geography we're hearing now, obviously the maths for forms, but essay-based questions, so much more.
Yeah, our English department, because we had OneNote before we had Teams.
Yeah.
And that was a something, again, at Ben, when you talk to other educators, they will say, what's your go-to, OneNote or Teams? And it's like, I promise you, they are beautifully linked. And the only reason that we used OneNote was, in the first instance, pre-lockdown, that was the only tool that we had. So the distribution of pages and the other features that you've got within OneNote, yeah, that's fantastic. It's therefore then that mindset of saying to your students, well, look, you're then going to work on that as well, and I can see it.
It's the I can see it.
Paperless isn't, you can't just say that something's part of your pedagogy now just because it's gone paperless. But honestly, I had teachers that were ditching the bags for life of. You'd see them on a Friday walking up the path.
Well, no, it's not just.
And it's gone now because, well, there it is.
It's not just the teachers. We used to watch little year sevens walking out of school, secondary, especially secondary, because, well, obviously year seven secondary, but you see the primary kids go out. At Bowley, we could see both. And the primary kids are taking over what they needed to do because it was all like encompassing. So there was only like a couple of things they needed to take back.
Yeah.
Whereas the secondary kids, every subject almost that needs to go went back in that backpack.
Yeah.
And some of the bags are bigger than the kids.
Yeah, you see them like with like a CrossFitter's rucksack on or something else like that, because it's just enormous. And take your bag, take your book in anyway, just in case you need it.
Especially year seven, they're conscientious. So to say to them, no, you don't need to do any work when you go back, because they've got their phones. We've established that they don't need to take that. Is OneNote, and maybe that's the starting point that I think we'll probably have a conversation with. We'll keep referring to different methods of access in the classroom, computer room, home, phone.
Yeah.
And I think we will do that because that access is the thing. But could you then say in a subject, maybe your subject, never take that textbook with you, never take the written book, because all your homework is going to be on the phone, going to be digital?
I don't have any textbooks in my classroom. I don't use them. I don't find the students engage with it. It's not interesting to them. And as I say, then when you go back to OneNote, and that's where you then create your content, our English department as well. Again, I won't name her just yet, but the minute she discovered that she could then insert a rubric at the bottom of the page, and again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. But the minute she was doing that and she was highlighting the same points, it was she just found it so refreshing to be able to manage the learning that the students were doing, give them the feedback. And then I remember at one stage saying to me, I can't keep up now because the students are always wanting feedback. And you go, right, well, that's how you're going to save teachers' time. Don't take away I've planned your lessons for you.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's like,
and
be
the
creative.
Feedback is key, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
actually what digital changed for me, was the amount of feedback being given back.
And when you go back to forms, like instant feedback.
Yeah, instant feedback. And then it was the marking by just video recording as well. Not your face. The kids weren't bothered about my face.
Right.
But you were recording with like the finger over the camera and just doing the audio back, which now there are loads of tools to do just audio anyway. And the kids said this was the gold stuff. I mean, I wouldn't have sat there and typed out the stuff, but I was there with a computer screen at home, just flicking through with my mouse, just going, yeah, that bit's great. That bit, oh no, you need to rewrite this section, using my mouse to highlight it.
Right.
And they were like going gold with the rubric on top.
And then with that, naturally, you'll go, or I might just put them in a soundbite, and someone will say straight to you, yeah, you can just record some audio straight into OneNote.
Yeah, that's it, right? And so, we will deep dive into that. I think that's a natural place to kind of stop, because for me, I think we'll show people rather than talk about it visually in the kind of next session, because, if you want to bring something up, by fine, as I kind of wrap up.
No, I was just going to say, well, what I'll do then in the next session is I will demonstrate right from scratch. If this is the kind of thing that hooks you in as a teacher and you think, well, actually, I'd like to know more, then I'll demonstrate where to... some easy wins to get you started off.
Because even when, if anyone's coming from like the Google environment or using both at the same time, for me, there wasn't a OneNote. That was the change when I came to Microsoft, is that we used documents, individual documents, to do that. And you'd see the real time, and I would say Google real-time notes are flawless, and Microsoft is catching up with that. But OneNote was this collection of pages. So Google lost its way a little bit when you had so much documentation. Yeah. The kids didn't know where to find stuff. They'd have to go into classes and look. And that's where I think we'll see the power of OneNote in the next section. Yeah. But it is that real-time collaboration. You're seeing these things grow, and you can actually go back and track it. The multi-fact will stop, and I think we'll show. So thanks very much, Adam. I think, hopefully we've not solved access, but explained why. We'll be talking a lot more about, yes, use the classroom, yes, use the computer room, but I think primarily it'll be a lot of the phone access from home that the kids can use to supplement their learning, to maybe do some form stuff, to maybe transform and save you time, just time for the marking, time for the feedback. And I think that's a great place to stop. So we'll see you in a second. We'll be wearing much the same clothes, because we're just going to roll straight from this one to that one.
Did you not bring a spare t-shirt?
Yeah, I was actually thinking we should have done. Thanks, Adam.